My name is Rebecka Lundgren, and I work at UCSD at the Center on Gender Equity and Health, and my role is overall director of Agency for All. So the way I define agency is it's the awareness of options, the ability to set your goals, and then to achieve your goals. Okay. So that's the most high level. And then, there's a lot that goes into that. So it's your individual setting, being aware, setting your goals, and then achieving them, but it's also maybe a community, a family, an organization sets goals, and they might not always be aligned, the collective and the individual. Well, personally, I've had a lot of agency because I've been very fortunate to be in sort of leadership roles. And I've also worked with funders who are very flexible and supportive. For as long as I've had this career, we've known that, your programs are going to be more effective if they're guided by what the folks who are going to benefit from them want, and they're shaped by how people want to engage with them. That's a basic tenet of development, and I'm an anthropologist, so it's, very core to the way we work. So I think the extent to which our programs take into account what people want and how their lives unfold and how they want to, exert their power and agency, the more effective they'll be. At the sort of community, population level, that to me is relatively simple. It's not simple measuring it, but the idea would be you would measure if people are aware of their options, if they're setting their goals and they're achieving them. So, obviously there's a lot of challenges in measuring that, and then you also have to measure maybe they set their goals and were trying to achieve them, but environmental factors made it impossible for them to achieve. So you'd want to understand all of that, right? So there's a lot of complex sort of monitoring along that pathway of change. So how do we measure bringing together every partner's agency in a collective way? Because some people are going to lose, some people are going to win. Are they comfortable with that? And I think that's what we're really struggling with right now, are those negotiations about who decides certain things. So for us as a research organization, it's about having very clear definitions and measures of agency. So right now we don't have that. So we can talk to people about it in a way they understand. We can measure it in a survey, so that will help us make it concrete and unpacked, And then once we have that understanding, everything kind of branches off from there. Depending on where people are professionally, if they're really feeling a need to make their mark, to get a promotion, then that's a little more challenging. It's relatively easy for me to do this because I'm closer to retirement. It's like I don't need, more accolades or, so. But for younger, more junior researchers, they do need that career-wise. So kind of figuring out what everyone needs in the partnership and making sure they get it without taking away from what someone else needs. So that's the challenge, I think. Or in this situation, it was a challenge. It was relatively easy because we've all worked together before and personalities were easy. But when you get a complicated personality in the mix, then it's a different picture.
That's so interesting. And also that kind of like acknowledgement of like, suppose it's individual agency within the team, and where you are, like the context of that person's
Exactly.
life is
Right.
also relevant.
I mean, for a long time we've talked, nobody does anything without some self-interest, right? Even if you're volunteering, you're doing it because it makes you feel good, right? So so you need to understand what is that self-interest and make sure that you're speaking to that in your work. But sometimes it's hard to figure out what the self-interest is. So I think that's part of, I don't know if you call it agency, I think it's part of negotiating people's different agencies, trying to understand how can everyone keep their agency, but serve the collective. In a way, you're protecting collective agency, but speaking to individual needs and motivation. And sometimes it's not possible, I think. Yeah, I'm afraid. We might be learning that with this project. So working with these collaboratives, learning collaboratives, have taught me that the way people show up and participate and learn and share looks different than what I might have proposed, right? So, we need to give space for that and not always impose sort of the activities, the communication channels, styles that we might have, or I might have put into a proposal, right? So you need room for that sort of I don't know, expression of learning together, while still finding ways to move it along at a sort of project-based pace.